So this video is going to be a review on True West. The video wise, so I kind of already done a text version, but this is a proper this is a proper review on True West. So the introduction, setup of the play. Who is the playwright? The playwright of True West is Sam Shepard. What company is putting on this play? Well, the company that's putting on this play is actually Steppenwolf Theatre Company. Steppenwolf Theatre Company. That's the theatre company that set it up. And to further on add on, what is the context of this production? School show theatre. So it's a theatre production, and it's to kind of in a way show to an audience about siblings and in a way how siblings can be so different and what can lead to being polar opposites, if that makes complete sense. Like I remember in an interview Sam Shepard did say he wanted to give a taste of what it feels like to be two-sided towards the audience, because there are many occasions where there are there are two siblings and they grow up in very different environments, and he kind of wanted to portray a visual representation of what can actually happen in a household due to this. So yeah, so what's the context? So I would say it's definitely a theatre production. I wouldn't say it's a touring show, it is a movie, but it is more of a theatre production. Execution, how is the play executed? So the execution of the play is actually done via one scene. So it's only done in one room, and that one room is the kitchen and the dining room area. That is one room. And it's kind of crazy how you can actually see an entire movie being portrayed in just one scene, just purely just one scene in particular, because these characters talk about playing golf, they talk about their achievements, blah blah blah, but they never portray it. They always just cut back to the scene of the kitchen and the dining room, and it's just one of those real budget movies that True West is. But I think it's very interesting on how it is portrayed, on how a whole movie does is not just seen. It's also the words that the characters use, because True West is very strong with the words that the characters use. What's the director's vision? What is the director's vision? I would say the director's vision is to kind of in a way show the audience, like, well, plus they did have a budget, but in a way it was to also show the audience that it's not just about what you see in a movie, it's about what you hear in a movie, it's about using your active listening. And I think it's good for I think this kind of movie is good for upcoming actors who are struggle with that active listening, because this film in particular focuses very much more on what the characters say, not what the audience sees. What's the style? So the style is, of course, just it feels like it is very much like film theatre. It's a pretty much basic film theatre one, where it's just the stage and it's just cameras. There is a movie of it and there is a film of it, and they are both completely the same. So that's why I would say the style is just basic. Cameras slash or so cameras are just one side slash audience on one side. The performance is on the other side. How do the individual parts fit together to make a whole? Well, I would say the individual parts fit together to make a whole by. I might have to think about that one sec. The individual parts I would say that fit together as a whole. I would say, wait, sorry. How do the individual parts fit together as a whole? They fit together as a whole because, well, the use of the low budget and use of the actors actually properly being clear about what they're saying, I think is a perfect 50-50 in what the performance portrays. And the play was executed with a very unique way, because there are some abstract ways that the actors do have. There are some naturalistic methods, like Stanislavski use of like a telephone, use of old props, use of costumes. But there have been times, in particular in my scene, where I started the scene when standing on a dinner table and swinging a golf club to portray to the audience that I was talking about golf in the first place, because if I didn't have because I didn't have a golf club either, so I had to really just use like a motion, so I had to do like a decent grip like so, and just do like a swinging motion. So that was a way that I personally executed. But in the movie in particular, the movie that's inserted in the coursework, it's a very basic one because they do have the props for that. So it's a very basic portrayal. Specifics. Is there anything unique about this production? I would say the things that are unique about this production are the fact that it's one scene. It's just one setting. There's one setting, and it's just the kitchen and the dining room. That's what I would say is unique about it, because I don't really see any other budget movies like that, because it's not film theatre. In a way, in film theatre, it can be like that, but in a movie it's not like that. But it's like that in a movie, which is quite different. Who is the director? Ooh, that is a great question. Give me a sec. So the person that directed this one was Alan A. Goldstein, who who is a director from the 1980s, which makes sense because this is where the play takes place in the 1980s. The key cast of John Malkovich, who played Lee, and Gary Sinise, who played Austin, and we know all of this. What else have they done? Well, the director also made it quite clear what kind of characters each character is, because throughout the play Austin changes. He really visually portrays how Austin does change, because Austin is he's very very much himself. He's very calm, very collected, and very how do I put this, he strives to be the best he can, and he's very successful in the beginning, but after the situation happens with Saul and Lee, then all hell breaks loose, and Austin begins to change, and he visualizes it really well. Like, for example, in the costume that Austin wears, slowly but surely his costume gets more and more ripped apart, which visualizes his mindset, and in a way, I think it's a good visual representation of how Austin is feeling. However, Lee is the complete opposite. Lee is completely calm throughout the whole time. He hates Austin, but he never says it, but he hates him. But also, Lee's got complete clear clothing throughout the whole show. Lee's clothing is the complete same throughout the whole movie, and that in a way shows that Lee does not Lee does not portray his emotions visually, if that makes sense. He doesn't show his emotions, unlike Austin does, which proves that they are complete separate characters despite being brothers, which I thought was a very unique way that the director portrayed it. Who are the leads? Already said, the leads are John Malkovich, who played Lee, and Gary Sinise, who played Austin, as well as Sam Coppola, who played Saul, who is the director, as well as Margaret Gibson, who played the mum of the two brothers, of Austin and Lee. Is there a premiere or a remount? No, there is none. There hasn't been a premiere since 2002. In my opinion, was the production successful in execution? Why not? Is there something out of place about the individual rights? About the individual parts, light, sound, set, costume, vision, acting? What stands out? Does acting bring the play to life? Does the vision suit the intention of the play? Well, the play, if you're looking for old 1980s budget movie, that is the perfect play for you, I would say. I think it's very good for aspiring actors to come and watch a play like that, a movie like that, because it focuses very much on what the actors are saying, not what the actors are doing, which I think is brilliant for aspiring actors who struggle with active listening and struggle with understanding movies, because they rely so much on what happens visually, which is actually something I struggle with myself. However, in my opinion, the production itself is not very successful, in a sense of if it's just an audience that just wants to be entertained. I believe there should be more scenes. I believe in terms of more scenes, I think there should be different settings. I understand it is a different I understand that the budget is quite low and it's a different kind of movie, but if you're going to be talking about all of these things, for example, when Lee and Saul played golf together, they never showed what happened. In this movie I'm showing you, they never showed what happened, and sorry, in this movie that's in Session in the Causeway, they never showed what happened, and I think that's completely wrong. I think that they should have showed what happened, but it is what it is, because it would have made more sense in a way, because Lee uses terms like pitch and wedge and carp, and he uses a lot of golf terms. Specifically, pitch and wedge is a big golf term, and I think if they visually portrayed what a pitch and wedge was in a game of golf, for example, let's say if they portrayed what happened between Saul and Lee in a game of golf, then it would have made more sense, because I think the audience would have just been really confused afterwards, because the audience can be quite confused with that kind of stuff. The lighting, I mean, it's made in the 1980s with a low budget. The lighting and the sound is not as good as other movies during the time. And the same thing can be said with the vision. The acting is decent. I will say the acting is decent. The acting is very good in my opinion, actually, with how the actors portray Austin and Lee, because they do it in a very unique way. Austin's quite, the way he changes is just incredible, and Lee is just calm throughout the whole time. I think that's absolutely incredible. And also like the hairstyles, Austin looks very young, very shabby, and Lee's balding. I think that's sick. But to be honest, nothing really stands out in that sense apart from just the one setting scene. And does the acting bring the play to life? No, it doesn't. It really doesn't, because you can clearly tell, because the acting is The acting is decent, but the camera is just awful. It just doesn't bring it to life, and plus it is old. But even though it is old, you got movies that came out at similar times, such as Jaws, which kind of made something big, but that was only because it had a bigger budget. Does the vision suit the intentions of the play? Kind of. I do see I do see what Sam Shepard was going for, in terms of creating different identities between brothers, and how not every sibling can get along, and creating complete polar opposites, kind of very similar to Jekyll and Hyde. But to be honest, I don't think it does. I don't think there is enough visual representation in the overall movie to understand what happens, because the more you watch the movie, just the more complex it gets. You need to really understand the movie. You need to understand golf. You need to understand the political system. You need to understand the 1980s America. You need to understand the backstory of these two, because that's what a lot of movies actually do. They actually portray the backstories of their characters, so their characters understand where each other was coming from. For example, like The Greatest Showman, when I forgot the name of the main guy, but Hugh Jackman plays him. I remember in the very beginning of the movie, they actually showed him as a kid and showed his goals and why he was doing this, which made so much sense to the audience. However, in this circumstance, they've never done that, and it makes very little sense. It really does make very little sense, and that's what I think really needs to improve on, especially with this one, because I think True West is a brilliant movie. It's just portrayed wrong. It's just really, really portrayed wrong, but that's only for this movie in the coursework, but that's everything I got. So now, is the play worth seeing? Depends. If you're an aspiring actor that struggles with active listening, absolutely. But if you're an audience member, nah, it's not, unfortunately. Why? Needs more visual representation, needs more context behind the play. It just needs more overall, because at the moment it just looks like two American Donnies just screaming at each other. And if you're an audience member that doesn't know the story in the first place and just walks in blind, you're not going to understand it. That's what I'd say. And it's different. It's different to other ones I've seen, other plays and other movies I've seen, because they always show context prior. They always portray something prior. But it is what it is, and that's everything. Sweet. That's my review of True West, of the movie that I inserted in the coursework, and yeah, peace and love.